Well, good morning again, everybody. Um, Whenever I'm involved in finding a speaker and finding something out about them, there's a lot of resources, and one of them is Webster's Dictionary. I don't know how many of you go to Webster's Dictionary to find out about people, but in this case, I think it really fits. There's a definition in Webster's Dictionary called Renaissance man and Renaissance woman. It's there. And what they do, what their definition is it's any man or woman who has various interests and expertise in several areas. And a couple of years ago, I took the audacity of labeling high spec as a Renaissance man. Is High here this morning? High is not here. But many of you know high spec. He's a Renaissance man because he taught public school. When computers came out, the PC, he was one of the first to teach the use of computers. He has been what do I want to say? A guide on the river cruises, the architectural river cruises. And he is the author of many videos on personalities that he has spent a lot of time on. So High definitely fits that definition. We have another person today who's going to be our speaker, Susan Nelson, who I label, I'm going right ahead and say, she is a Renaissance woman. Susan also has been a public school teacher, also at Oakton College. She's a bicyclist. She's the reason she also doesn't, she's the acorn that does not fall far from her mother, Dorothy Olson. Many of you may remember Dorothy. She was the toast of Chicago for 84 years and singing and playing the piano in many, many venues. But Susan also has taught Spanish. Anyway, she's a very versatile person, and she definitely is a Renaissance woman. So today, Susan is going to tell us about her travels throughout the world. She has been here once before where she talked about the 104 countries that she has visited. And she's also now been through 50 states that she has visited. And this June, I just learned that Susan is going to take a bicycle trip on a barge from Amsterdam to in the Netherlands to Belgium. And that should be interesting. And so why does she ride the bike so much? I think she might even tell us. Let's give a big hand for Susan Nelson.
How many of you have ever ridden a bicycle on a Schwinn? How many of you have ever ridden a Schwinn? All right, a good number of you. So when I was 9 years old and I didn't know how to ride a bicycle and I was living with people that weren't my parents, and there was this guy named Eddie. And he said, Susan, you're already 9 years old and you don't know how to ride a bicycle. And so I'm going to teach you how to ride because I feel sorry for you. You're already 9 years old and you've never been on a bicycle. So he went into the garage, he pulled out the old, rusty, rickety Schwinn with the fenders, the kind that you have to pedal backwards to stop. The old rusted chain. I think he had a little oil somewhere and he maybe put a few drips of oil on the chain. He said, okay, come on. We're going to go to the frontage road, nice and long road. And he said, okay, put your hands on the handlebars now. Put your seat on the seat. That's what it's for. And now I'm going to hold on to the side and I'm going to run with you. And then I'm going to let you go. And so then what happened was he started in and then I let the handlebars. He said, no, Susan, you cannot do that. So then what happened was he said, get back on the bicycle. We're going to do this again. So he ran with me down the not the yellow brick road. It was the frontage road and he let go. And you know what? Because I'm a Libra and the sign of the Libra is the scale and balance, and I caught my balance. And I, to this day, remember that second when I caught my balance, when I felt that sense of balance on the bicycle, and I've been riding a bicycle ever since. And then I started riding in the neighborhood to all my little friends' house on that old rickety Schwinn. And I rode to the grocery store, and I rode to the library, and I rode to school, and it was so much fun. And then I moved back to the city, and guess what? I rode to the library, and I rode with my friends. And then I got to be a little older, and there was an organization, Kitty Corner from Wrigley Field, and it was called American Youth Hostel. Any of you ever heard of American Youth Hostel? And so they had trips. They had nice bicycle trips downtown, bicycle trips into the neighborhoods, and bicycle trips out of the neighborhoods, bicycle trips into other cities, bicycle trips to the countryside, bicycle trips all over the place. And I went with them and I loved it. And you know what? One time when I was about 26 years old or so, I went on a bicycle trip. It was the longest, to this day, it's the longest amount of riding I've done in one day. It was 110 miles. And I came back from that bicycle trip and my knees hurt. And so I went to the good doc, and the good doc said, "Oh, you, my dear, must have an operation. We must remove the cartilage from your knee." And I said, "We'll see about that." So I decided to sign up for Bike Centennial. And Bike Centennial was a route that was in honor of Bicentennial, 1776, 1976, get it? And so they had this ride, and this was it. Okay, they had this ride. Okay, now just a minute. And this was it. All right, so that is that was called the Bicentennial. Bicentennial went from Astoria, Oregon, all the way down to Yorktown, Virginia, 4,250 miles. Well, I decided to sign up for a portion of that trip, which was from Astoria, Oregon to Missoula, Montana, right in through here. It was a 1,000-mile ride in about 3 weeks. And I said, either my knee is going to strengthen, or it's going to blow out. So I decided to take the chance, and needless to say, I still haven't had that knee surgery. So, but I've been through this part of the bicycle, just the bicycle Bicentennial. I've been from Astoria, Oregon, through Missoula, Montana, all the way through Colorado, and then Kentucky, and then over here to the Eastern Seaboard. But in addition to that, I've been through California and South Dakota and Minnesota, and all through all these states of the Midwest, Ohio, Pennsylvania, all of this. And then I've been through here and then down to South Carolina and Georgia. So I am not going to show you all 25 states that I've bicycled through. We'll be here till midnight. But I am going to show you a composite of these rides. And about 70% of these rides are my own photos, and about 30% of them I had to take from Google Images. Why? Because for me to go back and find the trips from 55 years ago, it was going to take too much time. But there are all kinds of bikes, folks. You might say, "Oh, lucky her. She gets to still go bicycle riding, but I'm on a walker." There are all kinds of bikes out there. There are standard bikes and hybrid bikes and bicycles with thick tires. And there are tricycles and the recumbents, and they're out there. And there are tricycles and new steps and fitness centers. And there are adaptive bikes for folks with special needs. So no matter what your situation is, you can get on a bicycle and ride it, and you can have a lot of fun doing it. And I want to say that there's no such thing as too old to ride, because when I was on one of these trips through the this part of Minnesota right here, it is Lanesboro, Minnesota. The River Route Trail is one of the most beautiful trails, believe it or not, in the country. And there was a couple on this group ride I was on with Rhodes Scholar, and he was 92 and she was 90, and nobody could keep, not even a bike leader could keep up with them. 92 years old and 90. So there's no excuse for not getting on a bicycle and riding. And part of the reason I'm doing this talk today is to give you the inspiration and the encouragement and the guts to get back on and ride some more. So why do I ride a bicycle? I become immersed in the scenery. you can become so immersed in the scenery, you are one with it. And I physically passed through history. I physically passed through history. So when we see this, you're going to see the man of war groomer in Kentucky. After my ride in Kentucky, and I was by myself, and I took my bicycle and went on, it was in Lexington, and I found myself biking through some of the African-American neighborhoods. And there was, these people were living in shacks. I mean, these were shacks that were about to fall down. And I was passing by, and there was this really old man that was really slightly built, and he was on the porch, and the porch steps were about to fall down. And he waved to me, I waved to him, and then he started coming down the steps, and I stopped, and we started talking. And he said, you know, I said, you have some beautiful horses here in Lexington. This is really horsey country. He said, yeah, I'll tell you something. I was a groomer for man of war, and I was by his side when he died. And the tears started streaming down his face, just streaming down his face. And that was a moment that I never would have experienced if I had been on any other form of transportation. And so that's what I mean by passing through history, physically passing through history. And we'll see the Mason-Dixon line. The Mason-Dixon line runs through a bicycle path, one of the bicycle trails. And then there are more examples as we do the slideshow. And I absorb the natural wonders, the nature, the attractions. I meet folks and have an opportunity to feel the culture of each state. And as we go through this slideshow, I'm not going to say very much. I'm going to let it speak for itself. And I'm going to show you that there is culture. Each state has its own culture. And when you're on a bicycle, you can just absorb, you feel the culture of that state. Each state has its own culture. So sit back and view the pictures, immerse yourself, pretend you are on this bicycle trips. I'm not going to say very much so that you can get a chance to feel the thrill, the exhilaration, the sense of awe and meditation. And the presentation goes from west to east, generally goes from west of the country to east of the country. And I feel close to my creator when I'm on my bicycle. I feel close to my country, and it's great exercise. So here we go. And I will stop occasionally to say something, but for the most part, I'm not. Ready? Here we go. And at the end, there's a surprise. So getting ready for the ride with my daughter on Lake Michigan. Where Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds was filmed. California. Healdsburg, between Napa Valley and Sonoma Valley, the center of wine country. After you've ridden 70 miles, believe me, you need something like that. Food, clothing, shelter, and transportation all in one spot. Even the shelter, the tent. Carbondale, Colorado, has Linwood Cemetery, where Doc Holliday, among other Western gangers, are buried. But I didn't get a chance to get to Doc Holliday's grave site because of the bears. and you bicycle into nature. I'm going to give you a minute to read this. Do you want me to read it to you, folks? All right. In summer, black swifts can be seen patrolling the sky for insects high above Hanging Lake. In the evening, adults return to their moss-bound nests to feed their young. As a highly specialized species, black swifts in Colorado can only build their nests in cool areas beside or behind waterfalls. Enjoy the aerial show these acrobats put on, but please do not disturb their nesting areas. And then we see that Hanging Lake is a natural wonder, recognized as a national natural landmark. Hanging Lake is more than a lake. Perched on a cliffside, it is a unique ecosystem comprised of springs and unusual geologic features that support uncommon hanging gardens and special bird communities. Layers of travertine formed over millennia from deposits of dissolved limestone line the lake and shoreline and give the clear water its stunning aqua color. I literally bumped into that on my bicycle. It is adventurous. And of course, we know about the culture of Colorado with John Denver. And on to South Dakota. And this is the Mickelson Trail. And on the right-hand side, you can see the Mount Rushmore, Custer State Park. And on the left-hand one, you can see Deadwood. We'll see Deadwood in a minute, all the way down to Crazy Horse and Edgemont. This is Custer State Park. And I took my car into Custer State Park and I freaked out, except you cannot freak out because those animals were closer to my car than these animals are to this. I mean, they were just hovering around my car. And I thought, oh my God. So what happened was I decided to be calm. And I decided that these animals are really not interested in me because my car is a little pebble to them. These are the largest North American mammals. These are the largest mammals of North America, the bison. But they were just ambling across. This is Deadwood, South Dakota. And there's Mount Rushmore. On to Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes. Only not really, it's the land of 15,000. Did you know that? Talk about culture. And here's Bemidji. Another little white church with a steeple. And here's Lady Justice for the many Native American reservations in Minnesota. And who would have guessed that this is the Mississippi River? More culture. Lots of bears in Minnesota, lots of them.
Can you ride your bike through the bear country?
We did.
What buffalo?
Not there. And of course, fishing is a big deal, especially when you get to eat the walleye. Oh, it's so tasty. See the cows? That's a cue sheet. And just sort of coming into town where there's just happens to be a festival going on. And of course, cross-country skis, very appropriate for Minnesota, cross-country skiing. And of course, I have a marriage license and a hunting license. I only carry one of them with me in my wallet. Guess which one he carries with him in his wallet? And it's not the marriage license. And here's an old depot. and another old depot that is on the Registry of National Historic Places. How do you like that? Minnesota thinks its claim to fame is corn. They haven't come to places like Illinois and Iowa and Wisconsin and Kansas. And there it is, their claim to fame, corn. This is Minnesota folklore, if ever there was one. This is a lake, folks. It looks like a meadow. It's a lake. The grasses are growing right up through that water. You try to walk on that, you're going to drown. It's a lake. This is the Root River Trail I was telling you about. Elroy Sparta Run in Wisconsin. And of course, this is definitely part of the Wisconsin culture. Are you aware that Wisconsin has more taverns per capita than any other state in the country? Right up the road a piece, folks, for those of you who are interested. Indiana, Lincoln's boyhood home. Somehow Illinois was able to capture land of Lincoln, even though Lincoln was born in Kentucky and spent from age 7 until he was 21 in Indiana. Isn't that something? And there's his boyhood home, Abraham Lincoln. See, there is more than one way to get around. Lots of Amish in Napanee. And here's Brown County, Indiana. It's in the southern part of Indiana by Bloomington University, by Indiana University. It is gorgeous. And in October, they have something called the Hilly 100. You get to ride 50 miles of hills one day and 50 miles of hills the next. 100 miles. It's called the Hilly 100. There it is, right up, boom. Then we get to Kentucky. Man of War. Shall I read this? Greatest racehorse and leading money winner of his day. Winner of 21 starts with lifetime earnings of $249,465. Foaled March 29th, 1917 at August Belmont's Nursery Stud a few miles away. Sold at auction as yearling for $5,000 to Samuel D. Riddle, his owner throughout his racing career and later retirement. Big Red sired 62 stakes winners, his get earning over $3.5 million. Now that's in about 1920, 1930. Can you imagine what that would be today? War Admiral, Triple Crown winner, was most famous of his offspring. Man of War died November 1st, 1947. And I saw that man right around 1977. I was still, 30 years later, the death was still fresh in his mind. Lies buried beneath this statue by noted sculptor Herbert Hasseltine. There he is. What an absolutely magnificent horse, huh? Man of War. And the only horse that ever beat him that one time was a horse that was called Upset. How appropriately named was he? And Kentucky was the most dangerous state. I will never ride again in Kentucky. Kentucky was the most dangerous state to ride in. You know why? Do you see this truck, this coal truck? Now, those trucks came whipping around and there's no shoulder. So as a bicycler and with my bicycle, I had to plaster myself against the side of that road. And there were times when, I'm telling you, the truck was coming like within a foot or 2 feet of me. It was scary. It's scary. I'm glad to be here. And of course, my old Kentucky home. And there it is. That's the inside of Stephen Foster's home. He was the first American to earn money for his writing, for his composing of music. How? Let's talk about the Kentucky culture. On to Ohio. Look at these old radiators. How many of you grew up with old radiators? Isn't that something? Yes, indeed. Inside that depot, Mount Vernon, Daniel Decatur Emmett, author of Dixie, born and buried here. Oh, I wish I was in the land of cotton. Old times there are not forgotten. He wasn't even from the South. And here's Mount Vernon, Ohio, the Grand Hotel. And look how grand it is. That's the lobby. Isn't it beautiful? And this is on the way out of town. This is a dog fountain. Isn't that cute? If they're all dogs spitting water into the fountain, that's cute. Now you see that at the end, you see the courthouse right there. And in this old photo, this is a photo of horse-drawn carriages, more modern cars. But in the just to the right of the stoplight, you can see the top of that courthouse. And there it is. There's the courthouse by day. And here is that same courthouse at sunset. Beautiful. Did you know that Ohio, not Motown, Detroit, Ohio is actually the birthplace of rock and roll? And that's why the Cleveland has the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I don't know if I should read this whole thing, but I'll give you a minute to read it if you want to read it on your own. Oh, you can't see it. When radio station WJW disc jockey Alan Freed from 1921 to 1963 used the term rock and roll to describe the up-tempo black rhythm and blues records he played beginning in 1951, he named a new genre of popular music that appealed to audiences on both sides of the 1950s American racial boundaries and dominated American culture for the rest of the 20th century. The popularity of Freed's nightly Moondog House Rock and Roll Party radio show encouraged him to organize the Moondog Coronation Ball, the first rock concert. Held at the Cleveland Arena on March 21st, 1952, the oversold show was beset by a riot during the first set. Freed, a charter inductee into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, moved to WINS in New York City in 1954 and continued to promote rock music through radio, television, movies, and live performances. So that is the birthplace of rock and roll. And of course, how do we get back from Cleveland all the way down to Bellevue, Kentucky, which is on the south of the Ohio River? Because that particular trip was a 350-mile trip in 6 days. So how do you get from Cleveland? Well, you have a shuttle. There's the shuttle right there. They put the bicycles in the trailer, and then we ride in the shuttle back to Bellevue, Kentucky. Now on to Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh has more bridges than, oh my God, the bridges in Pittsburgh. Oh. And then we get on the trail. Off we go to all these places. Connellsville. We'll see in a minute. So not left, not right. And here's the bicycle I bought from this lady. See, I have it on myself right now. But forward. And the dog was in the same position as that bear. And for just like a couple of seconds, and I got it. Look at that. Isn't that funny? So welcome to Connellsville. Motion picture pioneer Edwin S. Porter, born in Connellsville, developed concepts of film editing, screenplay, and other cinematic techniques. In early 20th century, he was America's leading director, and his most famous film was The Great Train Robbery in 1903. And Andrew Carnegie, as they pronounce it, donated money for lots of libraries all over the country because his idea was you are successful through education. So, does anybody know which state in this country has the most Carnegie donated libraries? Does anybody know the answer to that question? No, it's Indiana. And what about which library close to us did Andrew Carnegie help to fund? You won't believe it. Highland Park Library. How do you like that? So get a load of this library. It was built in 1903, and look at the gorgeous wood. Look at that. And look at this. And at the bottom of those stairs, that information desk is original. It's beautiful wood. It's a combination of mahogany and oak. Look at the dental work here. It's just exquisite. And here we are in Ohiopyle. Ohiopyle is not in Ohio. It's in Pennsylvania. Go figure. Yet another white church. Home away from home in this Victorian, beautiful home. Back on the trail. Does anybody know what this is? Falling Water, Frank Lloyd Wright. Obviously, we know why it's called Falling Water. And even his flatware has a hint of the prairie style to it. This is a bicycle trail. Be sure you're on the right side of the trail, honey. Western Maryland, onward to Western Maryland. And of course, we know about the caboose. It carried the conductor, brakeman, flagman. Cabooses were equipped with a stove for cooking and heating, bunks for rest, and a desk for the conductor's business. By the 1950s, cabooses became electrified. By the 60s, steel-bodied cars replaced wooden ones. Today, the caboose has fallen out of use, but the little car at the end of the train remains a beloved American icon. And here we are. On one side is Maryland, and on the other side is Pennsylvania. There you have it. That is the state line. Now, this is interesting. Early surveyors measured distance using chains, 66 feet long. A representation of a surveyor's chain crosses the trail. Walk the 66 feet and know that it took over 18,000 of these carefully placed lengths to cross Pennsylvania. That was their measurement. Surveying the line. Surveying the line. So in 1761, Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon, I can't read much of this myself. Anyway, it's very interesting. On to the next. All right, Journal of Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon, 1763 to 1768. The expedition reached this point in July of 1767. So that's how they measured it. So you've heard of the Mason-Dixon line. There it is, the Mason-Dixon line. It runs right through that bicycle trail. People driving their cars are not going to see this. Here's the Eastern Continental Divide. You've heard of the Western Continental Divide. Guess what? There's an Eastern one also. And there it is. And you see it goes up, and you can see beyond it, goes down. And here is the whole Great Allegheny Passage. It's about 175 miles from Pittsburgh through Ohiopyle and on to Cumberland, Maryland. And there we are at point zero. That's where it starts, the Great Allegheny Passage. And of course, we get shuttled back to Pittsburgh. The bicycles go in here, we go in here, off we go. That's what you pay for. Ipswich. Ipswich has more old houses than any other place in the country. There are so many old houses that they put them into the early period, the middle period, and the late period. So the early period houses are from 1634 until 1700. The middle period are like 1700 to 1780 or so. And the late period, the modern ones, are from 1780 and onward. So the Pilgrims, and it was the beginning of the Revolution. The Revolution of 1689, here on August 23rd, 1687, the citizens of Ipswich, led by the Reverend John Wise, denounced the levy of taxes by the arbitrary government of Sir Edmund Andros. Gee whiz, I'd like to have Mr. Weiss right now helping us. And from their protest sprang the American Revolution, beginning in 1689. All of these houses are from the early period. And you know what? If you own one of those houses, you cannot do anything to that house unless you have go through all kinds of paperwork. So you got a stopped up toilet. You need to go through all kinds of paperwork first. So there's a great deal of charm and romance connected to living in one of these houses, but it's a lot of responsibility. Being inside the scenery when you're on a bicycle. Shuttle time. We stayed in that red building there, meeting all kinds of wonderful folks and meeting all kinds of wonderful lobsters. And of course, Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard are part of Massachusetts. Very different kind of riding, very different, as you'll see in a minute. And this is Martha's Vineyard with its little gingerbread houses. And now on to South Carolina. And of course, we all know that South Carolina was the first state of slavery. And that culture is really everywhere because you have the Gullah people. In fact, Clarence Thomas from South Carolina is a Gullah. What's a Gullah? It's the language is sort of a combination of the Angolan language in Africa and a mixture of English. But I'm telling you, when those people speak it fast, you cannot understand a word they say. And then on to Beaufort through the Spanish Moss Trail. Absolutely gorgeous. And this is the mansion of Robert Smalls. Now, because we are from the North, we don't know who Robert, I bet that nobody in this room, or maybe one person in this room knows who Robert Smalls is. And yet, this house is on the National Historic, it's a National Historic Landmark. Why? Because here's Mr. Smalls, born into slavery in 1839, steals a Confederate military ship in 1861, disguises himself as a captain, uses the secret code book and hand signals to pass Confederate guard ships, rescues more slaves and their families, escapes to freedom, works as military advisor to the Union until the war ends, buys a house, runs for Congress, wins, and lives happily ever after until his death in 1915. Now that is a brave man. That is a brave man. And none of us in here even knew who he was until I visited the place. I didn't know he was either. Look at that. Isn't that breathtaking? That is Savannah, Georgia. And again, the culture, Wormslow Historic Site. That is a plantation. This is the entrance to Wormslow. And now we get back to Illinois. Home sweet home. And Illinois has its own beauty. We don't have mountains, but we have other beautiful, beautiful aspects. And this, folks, is the Skokie Lagoons, right around the corner. Happy trails to you. And we're going to end with this poem I wrote called Get Into Your Life and Onto Your Bike and Ride. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the first part of each one, and then you are going to chime in with get on your bike and ride. Do you think you can handle that? Of course you can. Here we go. For those of you who think I'm a teacher, do I seem to fit the bill? Get into your life and onto your bike and ride. Here we go. Feeling a little bit queasy inside.
Get on your bike and ride.
Got a big ache going on at your side.
Get on your bike and ride.
When you look in the mirror, do you look very wide?
Get on your bike and ride.
Can't lose the weight though you've tried and tried.
Get on your bike and ride.
Get on your bike. Get on your bike. Get on your bike and ride. Got into a fight and now you can't hide.
Get on your bike and ride.
Got a slight bruise to your ego or pride.
Get on your bike and ride.
Feeling remorse over someone who died.
Get on your bike and ride.
Can't seem to handle those feelings inside.
Get on your bike and ride.
Get on your bike.
Get on your bike. Get on your bike and ride.
Wipe off those tears that you've cried and cried. Rid the resentments against those who have lied. Go with the flow and feel your stride. Whatever is happening out or inside.
Get on your bike and ride. What wonderful program, Susan. We will have some.
And here's two more little, here's this one, being one with nature. And the last one is, if you get on your bicycle, you might just find yourself at your bridge of dreams.
Hand for Susan. Susan, while we're looking for questions, and I know we've got, it's not 10 after 10. I have 11:19. We've got 10 minutes for Q&A.
Yeah, it's 11:15.
So Don has the first question.
Susan, that was wonderful. I had never seen this before, but I knew you were a writer, and it's fantastic. Where did you stay at night? Did you camp out, or were you always inside?
I mean, on that first big trip, and on that first big trip, it was camping out every night, tent on the bicycle. But as I got a little bit more mature, I decided I wasn't interested in sleeping with skunks. And so it was hotel all the way. Although on the Hilly 100, we slept in the school gymnasium. Can you imagine that? And so after a few years of doing the Hilly 100, I said, I don't think I'm going to sleep on the school gymnasium. I think I've reached a financial position where I can sleep in a hotel. So that's what I did after that.
Yeah, hi. I just wondered, have you written the story of your ride?
I have not. I've written the story of my heritage, but not of my rides.
My wife's book club and I just finished a book called The Ride of Her Life. And it's about a woman in her 60s who left Maine in 1950 without a cent to her name.
Did she ride a bicycle?
And she was on a horse, and she
Oh.
rode it all the way to California.
On a horse.
And the
okay.
book is a bestseller. Anyway, what kind of bike do you have?
I have a Trek. It's about 25 years old.
I see.
And
Okay.
for those of you who don't ride well, I mean, you can go with the e-bike. I wouldn't take an e-bike myself because it's too damn heavy. But you know, e-bike is a good option.
I see. Yeah, I have a Swin Super Sport, and I used to ride about 50 to 60 miles every Sunday when my wife went to church. But I realized I was riding with a guy who had a younger boy,
We have other people.
Swiss guy, and we traded bikes. He could hardly ride mine.
Okay.
And his was like, you didn't even have any effort.
All right,
So
thank you. Any other questions?
Oh, Susan, that was great. I was wondering if you get time to go to tour those houses where you showed the pictures indoors?
Oh, yes.
The historical
Oh,
places?
yes, absolutely.
Like
Oh,
the
yes. I mean,
whole group?
that is part of writing. And sometimes I've ridden by myself and sometimes I ride with a group. And sometimes you start with a group and then you go off on your own. And a lot of times I start with the group and we stay, but then I'll go off on my own to tour whatever it is. Absolutely.
And then you meet back? Is that like you
Sure.
got a schedule?
Oh, sure, whatever.
Very interesting.
There's a question over there too.
I understand that you're going to go to Amsterdam.
I'm going to the Netherlands and Belgium, and it's called Bike and Barge. And it's a barge that goes through the canal system of the Netherlands, not just Amsterdam, the Netherlands and Belgium. And then in the morning, we take the bikes off of the barge and we meet up with the barge that has gone through part of the canal in the afternoon. and we
Yeah.
do that.
But we just got back and was really surprised that some of the parts of the canal had no blockage in front of it. So, I couldn't imagine people.
I'm not the captain of the ship. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna take my bicycle. That's their
No, we're
problem.
talking about riding a bike down the street and all of a sudden there's a canal. So.
We'll figure it out. That's why
Yep.
I have a tour guide.
All right.
Amsterdam is just loaded with bicycles.
Sure.
I mean, everyone rides their bicycles in Belgium and Netherlands. It's just fantastic.
Bicycle culture.
Yeah, it
Who else?
is.
I think there was a question over there somewhere. Question. Hi, Dolores.
Hi, Susan. I've been a friend of Susan's for 43 years. She was pregnant with her twins when I was pregnant with my daughter. And I've traveled the world with her vicariously. And a nice reminder, Susan, of where we've been here. But my question is, how do you prepare for these trips, especially the long ones?
Well, I've been a bicycle, people say, oh my God, you have to get on your bicycle and you have to ride, like you have to get ready. I've been on my bicycle since I'm 9 years old. So I don't really have to do too much now, right? True. I haven't been bicycling during the winter, but we have muscle memory. We all do. Our bodies have muscle memory. I can get on my bicycle and go just for a few days and boom, I'm ready to do one of those trips. That's just. And then how else do I prepare? Well, make sure I've got my bicycle gloves with me and my, all of the padded shorts and stuff like that. That's it. And my bicycle sleeves. I was going to wear bicycle sleeves today, but those bicycle sleeves are valuable to me.
I'm happen to have a three-wheeler bike.
Tricycle.
A
An adult
tricycle.
tricycle.
Mhm.
Great.
And I do ride it all the time. every day.
Wonderful.
And it's interesting because people stop you and say, great bike and where'd you get it and all that kind of thing. And plus I end up writing about my experiences, even though it's basically in the neighborhood. So I just want to put in for anybody that's afraid of balance or something, the tricycle's great because you can just step on it and go.
Mhm.
So
It's a spiritual experience to go
Yeah.
bicycle riding.
Thank
It's
you.
actually
And
spiritual for me.
What kind of trails and stuff did you have to go through, or you had to switch gears a little bit and go somewhere else to get through?
You know what? You can there 1/2 block from here is the entrance to a trail. 1/2 block away.
Mhm.
And you can get on that trail, go to the right. And within 10 minutes, you are having to shift your gears because there's this hill, this huge hill that goes over Lake Street. Woo! And you have to shift gears. So it doesn't take, you don't have to go too far away, folks, like, 2 miles from here and you're getting all the benefit of all your gears.
Go all the way down to Bryn Mawr, actually. The bicycle trail from here is
Yeah.
fantastic.
What else? We got another question over here.
Ernie, we'll just take one more and then I'm going to take one from Zoom.
Those who are serving pizza.
Okay, 2 questions. One, what is your favorite bike store around here to get gear? Number 2, do you ship when you're going to Amsterdam? Do you ship your own bike or do you rent bikes there?
No, that's a good question. So when I went to Oregon, on the Oregon part of that American bicycle trip, in those days, you could still just take your bicycle to the airport and they would put the whole bicycle all completed into the belly of the plane. Then after a while, somebody said, oh, that's not a good idea. You have to package your bicycle. So I did that one time. It was a pain in the rear, no pun intended. And after that, I said, this is either if I'm bicycling someplace that I can drive to, fine. Otherwise, it's part of the package. You rent the bike, it's $100 and good to go. So that takes care of that question. Yes.
Yeah, I want to ask you, like when you ride by yourself, do you know how to fix flats?
No, I
Because-
don't.
Not that, because.
No, I don't.
Ask you,
So I always pray. I say, dear God, please let me return home without a flat tire. It always works.
no, because, because,
I will answer that.
oh, excuse me, because I also ride a bicycle and that's one of the biggest fears I have. And
Nah,
I'm gonna
I'm
flat
fearless.
tire, and they get a flat tire and then over on the rear tire. And it's,
I'm totally fearless.
You have to.
Thank you.
I've slept under bridges in Jerusalem. I'm fearless.
One more question and then I have the last question because we have to
And the Zoom. the
serve warm
people.
pizza. Could you pass that, please?
George Garner.
Susan, do you have this presentation available like on YouTube or something? I'd love to show it to my wife.
Did you tape your program? Were you allowing taping? Okay, so it's going to be on the North Shore Senior Center website in a couple, 3 weeks.
Wonderful.
You'll be able to have everybody share
Thank you
that.
so much. I consider that a
We have to
compliment.
talk Susan into writing a book because this is the second book she needs to write. You're already behind one book from the last program. Last
No,
question. Oh,
Last
go ahead.
question is a
Go ahead.
Zoom. Isn't it? Did you say you were going to take a
Yes.
Zoom question?
Well, this is what I'm
Ah.
going to ask because I've collected their
Ah.
thoughts. First, just a comment. I think bicycles are terrible. The worst job I ever had when I was in college was working at Schwinn, the swing shift from 4 to midnight in their 120-degree foundry, checking for burrs on bicycle frames by running your hand in. And if you bled, that meant it was rejected. But a serious question, because it was a wonderful program. How do you deal with the different skill sets of the crew? In other words, you're with a group of people. Are they all equally skilled in being able to handle all of the demands of a day ride? And what happens if someone runs into a problem?
Okay.
Or if a bike runs into it's destroyed, it's just, can't work. How do you deal with
Okay, well, when I'm by myself, and if I've never had a flat tire when I'm by myself. There's always a first time. Watch, I'm going to walk out of here now that we've been talking about it, the first thing out of the box is going to be a flat tire. But you know what? There's always people who come along. If you're on a bicycle path, there are always people who come along. And what's the worst thing that can happen? Somebody doesn't come along. And then what happens? I mean, you figure it out as you go. So I don't worry about it. But as far as the skill set, that's what they have sweeps for. Have you ever heard of a sweep?
No.
A sweep is the person. It's not a broom. It's the person who is in charge of making sure that every last person gets to where they're supposed to go if you're on a group ride. And so the sweep is responsible. I'm not responsible. I've paid so that I'm not responsible. So the sweep makes sure that everybody.
Is that a
And
person
Mr.
with
and
a
Mrs.
car?
Huh?
Is that a person with a car?
It's a person with a bicycle.
Okay.
And then I also, again, Mr. and Mrs. Doctor, the 92-year-old and the 90-year-old, those two people are my inspiration. There is no such thing as being too old to ride your bicycle. They were at the front of the pack,
Yep. 90 and 92.
90 and 92.
That's
And they
amazing.
used to have races with each other. Can you imagine that?
Okay, let's, I don't think what we're going to serve in just a minute now is going to be suitable for a daily diet, but we'll enjoy the pizza today. But let's give Susan a big hand for a wonderful program.